Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is schoolyard bullies and kindergarten Buddhas. And I was writing about how I used to volunteer in my kids' classrooms when they were little. I did it all through elementary school, and both of my kids went to public school here in Santa Monica. It's one of the best reasons to be in Santa Monica. The public school system here is really excellent, and so both of my kids were from kindergarten forward in the public school system here. And volunteering is like one of the best ways you can support these teachers in the classroom. And so it was a joy. I'd go in there, and a lot of the time it was mayhem because you have a lot of kids and one teacher. And sometimes it's like, Lord of the Flies. You walk in, especially in kindergarten. And sometimes there would be these like great projects, and whatever it was that the teacher needed is what I would go in and do. But it was such a fun opportunity to kind of see this glimpse into their days when they weren't with me and their friends and the way they were, their little personalities in a different light than I would normally see them at home. And so there's this day that I was there with my daughter's kindergarten class, and my daughter, both of my kids, they really loved it when I was there, which was it felt like such an important thing to me, that like the kids were not embarrassed to have me there or uncomfortable. They were like thrilled. That just felt to me like a really good sign that I was getting some of the important things right. And of course, when they're in kindergarten, they're still looking at you like you're a godlike creature as they turn into like preteens and teenagers. that goes down a little bit in case you haven't reached that yet. But still, it felt like such a good, it's just such a lift when your kids are like, excited to have you in the room with them like that. So I was sitting at this table with my daughter, and there were 6 kids, and the project that we were doing that day was each of the kids had like a piece of construction paper and then a lined paper. They had each written the sentence, "My favorite thing about myself is," and there was a blank, just a blank spot they were supposed to fill in with whatever word sprung to mind. So it could be, what some of them just instantly were yelling things out, like my smile or my freckles or I'm strong. I mean, you can imagine a bunch of 5-year-olds. And then some of them were quiet and like struggling a little bit. And I really felt for them because when I was in kindergarten, that's when things started to really get difficult for me. A lot of things happened that I've written about a lot and talked about a lot. So I won't spend a lot of time, on it, but that's kind of right at that moment where everything had changed. Right before my 4th birthday, my maternal grandmother died. My dad left the next week. My mom, I think, was just like, beside herself and took me to this farm that belonged to a friend of hers I'd never met and left. So a lot of things had happened. And then she came and got me eventually. And I started this new life of like going back and forth between my mom's and my dad's and kind of never really knowing where I was going. So kindergarten, I remember just feeling really uncomfortable, and I liked the consistency of being there. I loved my friends. I loved the teachers, but I was just going through so much in my home life that I remember it being this time where I got very quiet. And so questions like that, I didn't like circle time in the morning. That part where there'd be like, you'd have, there'd be like music and you'd go around the circle and the music would stop and you would say, everyone would say good morning, everybody would stare at you and you'd say like your name and one thing you were happy about or excited about. I just like when my mom was late, I would be so relieved to have missed circle time. I just did not like the attention being on me in that way at that time. And it's such a formative, time too, when you're 5 that way. And so I think it really, my heart went out to the kids that were sort of like not instantly thinking of saying their favorite thing about themselves. And so I said that to the table. Yeah, I didn't go into all that detail. I just said, this is the kind of question that would have been really hard for me when I was your age. It would have made I wouldn't have known how to answer, and it would have made my tummy feel funny. And they all stared at me. I don't know the last time you were, with a bunch of 5-year-olds, but if you're a grown up with a bunch of 5-year-olds and you start talking about when you were their age, they're like astounded, that you could ever have been their age, that you could ever have existed as, a person who was their age. And so they all looked at me, in that way. And also, I think just that I had said that out loud, that this is the kind of question I wouldn't have known how to answer. I would have wanted to hide. It would have made my tummy feel upset. It's like that thing where you say something to a kid that maybe they're feeling like is supposed to be a secret. Just that little look on their faces, And so my daughter started laughing. Like a lot of the kids started laughing. I was sitting next to you, this little girl named Angelina. And she was one of the kids who had been quiet, hadn't really known what words to, fill in the blank with. And she looked up at me with a little smile on her face, and just then, and siren, really loud siren, as they are, she was piercing through the room, and an ambulance flew by, and she clasped her hands, closed her eyes, and bowed her little head down and started whispering words. The rest of the kids were instantly immersed in doing their project again. And I realized what she was doing, and I joined her. I clasped my hands and I closed my eyes and I just said a little prayer that, like, wherever that ambulance was going, whomever was waiting for it on the other end, that, please could, would they be okay? That kind of idea. And when I opened my eyes, she was like looking up at me and she whispered to me, I said a little prayer for the people, that everybody would be okay. And I said to her, I knew that's what you were doing. And it was such a beautiful, kind-hearted thing to do. I joined you. And she picked up her crayon and wrote kind-hearted in the kind heart. My favorite thing about me is my kind heart in the blank space. And I'm still all these, like, it's 10 years later, still like, and it really, in that moment, I'm still thinking, it's 10 years. It's one of those things that had such an impact on me because, here's this 5-year-old kid. It's not like her mom's around or, there's nobody there telling her to do this. It's just like she's in this classroom with her friends, a million things going on, this project and all this stuff around her. And yet, like, the siren goes by, there's an ambulance. She instantly knows someone's in trouble somewhere. And she stops what she's doing and just, like, doesn't know who's waiting, doesn't know anything about the person on the other end of that siren, doesn't care. Just with her whole little pure heart is like praying that they're okay. And that, to me, is the entire download of being a decent human being. That's it. Like, really and truly, that is all any of us needs to know. And I have, at this point, in my life, I have studied with a lot of teachers in a lot of different parts of the world, spiritual teachers, meditation teachers, yoga teachers. I've heard the Dalai Lama speak in person twice, once when I was pregnant with my son, and I wrote about that too. And, one of the things he said is the person who taught him the most about compassion out of all the teachers he studied with was his mother. And I remember sitting there with my, pregnant belly with my son, and just put my hands on my belly and just, made a promise to myself and to him that I was going to do the very best that I could. And I really believe in my heart that's the truth. It's like, we are, what we're doing every day, like, that's always going to be, and I'm not just talking to people who have children. It's like, what you do is the best example of how you feel and what you think. And that little Angelina, of all the people I've ever studied with, and I've done like, these 12-day silent meditation retreats, where literally like they're 10-day full immersion things where you're not looking at anyone. You're not, you're not making eye contact. You're not speaking to another person. And you're just meditating from 4:00 in the morning until 9:00 at night. But it's 12 days because there's the day you arrive and the day you leave. But, and I've done that multiple times. I mean, that's some hardcore stuff there. And still, out of all the people I've ever studied with, practiced with, she had it, never met anybody who had it more than that little girl. And that to me is what has gotten just wildly lost in our cultural conversation at this point, certainly in this country, but I feel like it's like global, there's just a real lack of the basic humanity and compassion and empathy, that has not for everyone. Just, I feel like by and large, that quality is the thing that we are the most in need of right now. And of course, I'm thinking in the context of what's happening in the United States. And I haven't made any secret of how I feel about what's happening here. But I'm not, at this point in time, now I'm just in a state of really wanting to figure out what we can do here, because we're not going to be able to sustain rage, outrage, like, that's just not, we're going to burn out. And apathy isn't going to work. You can't just like give up, throw your hands up, and like put a blanket over your head. So I have been, I don't know, for as long, for me, I'm always fascinated by the microcosm and the macrocosm and the way these two things are, reflecting back and forth at each other. So it's like what's happening inside each person and what's happening like in the world around us. And I really feel that where we are right now is we're just at such a critical moment in time. And there are these very specific things that are happening here in the United States that I find, terrifying and concerning, deeply concerning. where people now in these last 10 days are even less safe than they were 10 days ago. This is very much what I was, I did not want to see happen. And so that's where I'm at, and the other side of things too, I feel like, I love my country, in case that isn't clear. I love the United States of America. I feel when you love your country, then what you want is for it to be the best that it could possibly be. And I feel like when you love a person, you want that person to be the best they can possibly be. And so if you are genuinely loving another human being and you see that they are not living up to their potential, who they say they are, who they want people to think they are, and you really love them, like you're really close to them, you're really invested in their well-being, their growth, then you're going to tell them the truth, right? Then you're going to say to them, these choices you're making, these things that you're doing, and then who you say you are, they don't align. They are not meeting up. Now, we've never been the country we say we are. Like all men are created equal, all white men are created equal. That's who we've been from the beginning here. And that's just, you can just look. I mean, I'm not saying anything radical. That's the reality. If you look back at the history of this country from the beginning, it's all white men are created equal in the Constitution. That's how it was set up. And anything else has been fought for tooth and nail, and very slow progress. Even so, the Constitution is an amazing document, and there are all these amendments that people have, fought for. And so, there are people who find this stuff, like I find this fascinating, right? I find history fascinating, because you can learn so much about like where you've been, how far you've come, and mistakes you've made, things hopefully you don't want to repeat, all that stuff. So when I got to high school, I took an advanced placement constitutional law class. And part of what we did is there would be these cases, right? So Brown versus the Board of Ed, that's a really famous case. And you look at the case, and there's a brief, right? That's what they're called. And you dissect it. You try to pick out the really salient details, like so here this case comes in front of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's supposed to uphold the Constitution. And now you're going to have people fighting and saying, well, this is why this case, this thing that happened to this person violates their rights under the Constitution. And I'm going to argue that using these, these lines here, this amendment, that's how this goes, right? I loved that stuff. I found it so fascinating, the way that these cases were brought before the Supreme Court, the way they were argued, the way they were decided, the way, these justices, the way they weighed in at the end, the way they made their decisions about which way they ruled. So I have always found that kind of thing fascinating. This past week, a lot of things happened, and that is part of, where we find ourselves now. There are people who come along, and you probably have people like this in your life, and it's just constant chaos. It's just, it's just drama and chaos, and there's no accountability. They're never wrong. You're never getting an apology. And it's just mayhem, people like that, I just like arm's length. Like, I just don't even, I don't want that. So I certainly don't want that in the Oval Office, let alone, people who speak about women this way treat women this way and, are adjudicated rapists. So like we understand where I am on that. That's like a super hard line for me, but not everyone apparently. So, that's where I am. I don't need to relitigate that, but that's what we saw this week is just a lot of things that happened, like Monday night, this freezing of federal funds. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to kind of say a few things and then talk about the emotional like repercussions of a lot of it. That's unconstitutional. Just to be really clear about that. The Constitution gives Congress the power to, it's super basic, right? Like we all pay taxes. We all pay our federal taxes and we pay our state taxes every year. No one likes it. Everyone dreads tax time, but that's what we do, right? We've worked hard and then tax time comes. It's going to come up before we know it here. End of the year just happened. January was like the longest month I can remember. Felt like 4 months packed into 1 month. And so we pay our taxes. We pay federal taxes that go, to the country, and we pay state taxes. And that stuff, that's how everything runs. That's how we have our roads and all those things, right? So I'm not going to go that much more basic than that stuff. But the Constitution grants Congress the power to decide how those funds, the federal funds, are appropriated, how they're dispersed, how they're distributed amongst the states. Your Congress people, their senators, whatever, those are people, right? We elect them. And then if they start deciding, voting that these funds are being spent in ways we don't like, that's when hopefully we're flooding their offices with phone calls and emails. When the electorate, us, citizens, when we're not engaged, the whole thing falls apart if we're not paying attention because they're just like, oh, well, they're not watching me. I'm just going to do whatever's easy, whatever makes my life easy. And, here we are. So, that's so simplistic, but I'm just, that's basically what's supposed to happen is the Congress is supposed to decide and we, the people, are supposed to be able to weigh in on whether we're okay with what's happening or not. And if we're not okay, then we vote them out the next time. Now, there's a bunch of other problems. There's too much money and lobbyists and all kinds of things. Big pharma, the NRA, there's a lot of problems, no doubt. However, there are checks and balances. There's the Supreme Court. It's supposed to be there to make sure nothing gets too far out of whack, right? There's the Congress, the House, all that in place. There's the executive branch. There's these three things are supposed to make sure nobody's getting too far, like too much power one way or the other. And then we have like journalists who are supposed to be also reporting facts. So everything here's gotten pretty screwed up because of money, because of people making money. Billionaires, right, who do not care about any of that. They don't care about us. They don't care about checks and balances. They don't care about what political party you belong to. They just want to make more money. That's it. So, okay. President comes in, decides, I'm freezing all the federal funds. I'm going to do that. Everything's frozen. Federal funds are funding things like, Head Start. They're making sure SNAP, families that are like on the fringe who are barely making it because the whole system is just impossible for so many people now who are living like barely surviving. All these like federal employees are being told a lot of the programs, veterans who have come back, they're like suicide hotlines are being suddenly, people don't know, like, okay, those are being shut down right now. We're not really sure what's going on. Just absolute mayhem. A memo sent out that's not clear about like what programs are being affected or not. And all of this is about quote unquote DEI. Okay, we don't want any more DEI policies, also affecting, by the way, global aid. So the United States, we partner with, allies to provide aid across the world for, PEPFAR, people who are AIDS, right? Trying to get life-saving medication to people who are suffering from HIV/AIDS. We have people who are suffering from malaria and tuberculosis. Like there are, people in Syria. There are, it's Uganda, literally all over the world, Ukraine, Liberia, Sudan. Like there's no Gaza, like there's no shortage of places where people are suffering in this world. And we offer foreign aid, frozen. So we've got people who have gone to these places, who have, outposts there, who have devoted their lives trying to make sure people, Angelinas, right? The Angelinas of the world, who are like, I hear a siren. I know there are people who need help. It doesn't matter to me who they are. Like, if someone is suffering, I want to help. I'm answering the call. Who are now like, I don't know if my program's going to be funded anymore. I represent farmers here, and like, I don't know if we're going to have the money to plant a crop now because I'm not sure. Just absolute chaos for people. And then, federal employees being offered these like buyout, like hit reply with the word resign. Absolute just like madness, and no one knowing what is happening. And absolutely unconstitutional. Okay. And like, everyone should be terrified, concerned. Honestly, we've reached this very strange place where, you got to ask yourself, if this were flipped and the other party had won and they came in and did this, would I be okay right now? Wouldn't I be really, really concerned if the other party had won and came in and just literally like day one was like, we're freezing all federal funds, even though that's unconstitutional? I think you would be out of your mind, absolutely beside yourself with the damage being done and the systems of government being shut down, frozen. So that's the mayhem that was just created here. And these executive orders are this whole DEI thing. And that's what I want to get into that, and I'm heading there. But if this whole thing has been so sweeping and has impacted so many people and has made so many people feel unsafe and scared. And, I think most of us thought that the birthright citizenship, those cases were going to be the first ones to hit the Supreme Court, because the 14th Amendment of the Constitution protects birthright citizenship, meaning if you're born here in this country, you're a citizen, regardless of your parents, whatever, documentation or not. If you are born here in this country, you're a citizen. And now they're saying, no, we're going to challenge that. So I think a lot of people thought that was going to be like kind of the first thing that was brought before the Supreme Court. And then suddenly the president comes in and decides, I'm taking the purse strings away from Congress. I don't think anyone imagined that was going to happen. We've never seen that before, because it's insane. Even Nixon didn't do that. There are ways, if you want to come in and say, I want to, really look at the budget, there are targeted things. You could just go and sort of say, like, we're going to be looking at this, this, and this. But that's not what happened. And what did happen is not legal. And so it doesn't matter what side of the situation you're on. If you care about this country, you shouldn't be okay with anyone coming into power and doing things that are unconstitutional. The end. Like, that just shouldn't be okay with anybody. And the fact that it is, that's the part where you're like, wow, what's going on with you right now? Like, I don't, this is really strange. And I do think people need to take a look at like what's happening with me. If I'm like, yeah, I like that you're doing that, it's like, okay. But I mean, if that got flipped on you, I don't think you'd be singing that song. And I don't know. I think it might be time to kind of look in the mirror and take some deep breaths and try to figure out, like, just try to think about this whole empathy, compassion, but also, you know, I don't know. Like, do you want a dictatorship? Because I don't know. I think most of us could agree that's not going to go well for people. And then there's the other stuff, which is terrifying. And that's part of the situation here, right? That we're all dealing with in the United States. And everyone listening is not from the United States. But the plan is chaos. The plan is let's throw so many things at people that there's like a nervous system overload. Now, that's I've been working on this stuff for a really long time. For me out here, I happen to be in Los Angeles. So the timing with the fires, with everything, it's like we here in Los Angeles, our nervous systems, most of us were already really taxed. We're already using all the tools to sort of like deal with the trauma of just loss, really intense loss in a very short amount of time. And again, I've been saying this for the whole time, like some people lost their homes, lost, and the lack, and I was talking about that too a couple of weeks ago, like some of the lack of compassion there, people just like, oh, you people will all be fine. You've got money, you'll just buy a new mansion next week. It's like a lot of people here are hardworking, just really hardworking people who are not just, who are not millionaires, who did this. That's not the situation at all. So there's that. But there are also an incredible number of people here showing up and supporting this community, and, just doing anything and everything possible to make sure people have what they need, have somewhere to stay, have food to eat, have clothes to wear. Like it's not slowing down. I have been, doing clothing drives really from like moment one, and we've had to stop accepting donations because it's like overwhelming. I actually my trunk is full of stuff that I'm going to bring somewhere else because we're like, okay, everyone that we've just been doing this for like weeks now, and people are good. They've got what they need. The next phase of things out here in Los Angeles is a lot of people have now moved into whatever temporary housing situation they've found, and they're going to need like household items. Like that's where we are out here in this phase of things. And then there's going to be the rebuild, and that's another situation. Like it's going to be a process, right? There's like the cleanup of all this stuff, and then there's going to be the infrastructure, and it's going to be a long time before, there's a rebuilt community going on in these places. So it's a lot of pain out here, but people have been, for example, I've been like volunteering with Baby to Baby. It's an incredible organization. That's Baby, the number 2, Baby, if you want to look them up. They're really impressive. And they put out their February schedule for volunteering. They put it out at 6:00 last night. By 9:00, all the slots were filled. I mean, that's what's going on out here. People are just showing up. So that gives me a lot of hope and a lot of joy, like we're going to be okay. And that happened with this whole situation this week in the country as well. People did not just sit back. Part of these other executive orders and things that happened that I just want to talk about because of the emotional impact, right? So that there's just an understanding here of like what people are dealing with, aside from like the federal funds and the freezing of that stuff. as devastating as it is in this like constitutional, crisis, kind of like illegal, like, wow, could we just pause for a minute and talk about how wild this is, that this is happening? Even though it was instantly, there was a federal judge who blocked it, and, and outlooked 18 states immediately sued. I think like another 4 joined right away. So it's like, this was shut down quickly, and that memo was withdrawn quickly. And a lot of these funds they backed down because they realized people are not going to sit back for that. They're not going to accept that. That is not okay. And if this goes in front of the Supreme Court, you're not going to win because it's not legal. So I think that was a positive, even though the repercussions, that the foreign aid is frozen for 90 days. So those people that are struggling around the globe, only some of these things are being released. It's like, it's chaos still. But the outpouring, the outcry, the focus, the rising up, the like, absolutely not, that energy, the helpers, the people, the Angelinas, whatever you want to call it, that was instant. It was focused. It was reassuring, for sure. However, there's just so much going on. The DEI, diversion, equity, inclusion, right? Could we let's dig into this for a second. I saw some things that are really unbelievable. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really not on social media very much. Like, I'm here doing the podcast. And when I do the podcast, I'm also going live on this very, my Facebook private group that I have for a community that I built. I've got my writing life, and I have my yoga community. And so, as we all have for all these years, right? Social media is part of like the way we've been communicating with each other. And a lot of that is becoming part of this equation too. We've got billionaires who are controlling the platforms where we communicate with each other, and they don't care about us either. All they care about is making money. And the more we are screaming at each other and engaged and rage baiting and clicking on things, the more people want to advertise, because it's a lot of eyeballs, right? A lot of people showing up here, and the more they're making money. So they don't really care what's happening as long as we're here. I'm not doing that. I'm not clicking and screaming, and I'm not doing that. I'm kind of thinking about what I want to do about all that stuff. It's really tough because you can't really opt out of anything anymore. We have an oligarchy. We've got 14 billionaires just moved into our government. So, and even before that was happening, it's I was talking about our federal tax dollars. Like, half of our money is going toward war, toward the military, toward war, it's like, I'm not happy about that. I've never been happy about that. I'm not that's not my thing. I don't even eat animals. I don't want to participate in a cycle of violence. So yeah, I'd love to be able to opt out of a lot of things. And I'm trying right now to figure that part out. Obviously there is, you can mitigate as much as possible, and your choices matter. So I'm trying to weigh okay, I have an ability to communicate, and what is the value of being able to communicate with people, and are there any platforms where it's going to be good, where the people who own the platforms are going to be decent human beings who care? I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm I don't know if there are going to be any platforms, because I mean, blue sky, right? I'm on there, and there's a movement and a conversation happening where people are understanding what's going on. This stuff that I'm talking about right now. This whole billionaire bro thing where they're just taking over every aspect of everything that we do is not good for any of us. There's no doubt about that. And opting out as much as we can is good. But we also still want to be able to talk to each other and figure out what are some good things I can be doing to try to help and to try to like right the ship and to try to say no to the things that insult my soul here, that insult my heart. Like what can I be doing? So anyway, I'm still thinking about all of that. DEI. Okay. So part of these executive orders that went out, and you may have heard from, there's so many, and that's part of what was intentional. These like sweeping, orders that go out and they impact so many different areas that it's like you'd almost have to stop your life and read each one and spend like hours and hours to understand what's being said. But the main focal point of all of it is this problem with, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is a real, like, we're not doing that anymore. And it is, there are orders that have to do with protecting women from radical gender ideology, and protecting children from like radical, educational ideology. And so let's back it up and talk about that for a minute. So if you start, you might start to hear from educators, K through 12. There is this conversation about we are not going to fund public schools who are teaching our children to be ashamed of their history. What does that mean? That means we don't like the way American history is being taught to our children. We don't want our children to be learning about things like slavery that are going to make them feel ashamed of who they are. We don't want our children to learn that this country has a history of racism. So if we're going to teach slavery, if we're going to teach about that, we're going to teach it through this lens of like, yeah, the founding fathers, some of them owned slaves, but then like there are these abolitionists, and like it's because of because of these great white saviors, like the slaves were freed and there was a civil rights movement and everything's been great since then. Okay. That's one way to teach things, but it's not reality. And anyone paying attention knows that, And so that's like what is happening now. That's not education, that's indoctrination. Those are two different things, right? You're either teaching the kids, teaching our children, here's what happened. And here's the impact, and here's the ongoing reality of what has happened here. Or you're not. You're teaching a version of things through this particular lens. And if you're teaching anything that, diverges from that, then you're not going to get funding. Well, that's also illegal, in case you're wondering about that. That's also illegal. And the reason it's illegal is because we're not supposed to have our curriculum dictated by whichever party comes into power, for obvious reasons, right? And history's history. It's what happened. It's just the facts of what happened. That's what history is, right? It's like these things happened, and then these things happened, and then these things happened. And, hopefully we're teaching our kids critical thinking, and they can look around and they can see, wow, here we are. And there's still the impact. We have not gotten the ERA ratified here. It's 2024. We don't have the Equal Rights Amendment ratified in our Constitution. I mean, I don't know, what more do you need to hear? Like, women didn't get the vote until 1920, and that's only white women. So it's like, really, I don't know what people need to understand. Like, my mom in 1974, like, women couldn't have their own credit cards and their own bank accounts until after I was born. They needed to have either like their husband, their dad, their brother, their uncle, like co-sign with them. Like, I was already born when that changed. That's very recent history, friends. That's women. Forget about, women of color, people of color. So yeah, do we have like a history of racism, sexism, misogyny? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Come on now. Like, same-sex marriage, people like fight for that. And like, there's just, you gotta, I don't really think anyone listening to this is confused. So when you come in and you're like, we're not doing this DEI stuff anymore, that's what you're talking about. You're saying, I'm not happy. I don't want to support policies. And that's what these policies are about, okay? They are basically trying to address the systemic racism, bigotry, misogyny, sexism that is baked into our country and every system of our country. And there is a wage gap. I mean, it's everywhere. You don't have to like take my word for it. Just like literally look around and ask yourself, why, if a man and a woman are doing the exact same job and that she is doing it just as well as he is, why is he paid more? I mean, this isn't hard. It's not hard. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Why is if a white woman and a black woman are doing the same exact job just as well, why is the white woman paid more? Just like do the math, So that's what these DEI policies were. It was an attempt to try to fix that, bring us into something that feels fair, correct, right? To at least start to try to, address this. And it wasn't, by the way, the people who were benefiting the most from these DEI policies were white women. I mean, again, you can go and like check me. Go ahead, just please. Like, in fact, I wish you would. Like, please fact check me. And then there are people, and there's a little differently abled. Not everybody likes that term. So some people like prefer the term disabled to differently abled. So, certainly my intention is to be inclusive and not offend anyone. But that was part of the idea here, was to bring everybody in and make sure that if there are jobs available, everyone is getting an opportunity. It is not that people are going to be awarded jobs if they aren't up to the task. It's not that. It's that, like, okay, if you have two candidates who are equally good, equally qualified, let's give somebody who maybe isn't a white man, let's give them a shot at this, Let's do that. That's what it was. Let's try to get a cross section of what this country looks like into these positions of power here. Civil servants, everywhere, just across the board in our government. What do you want the government to look like? Let's just talk about civil servants for a minute. Do you want your government to look like a bunch of crusty old white men? Does that seem like what America looks like? Because it doesn't seem that way to me. You know, I'm going to tell you a silly story for a second. I took my daughter to see Wonder Woman, and that film opened with like these, it's a society of all female warriors, and it's a fight scene, and they're just like flying through the screen. You know, they're just like coming at you from everywhere. And I all of a sudden, like I got like a lump in my throat, you know? And I realized I've never seen this before. Yeah, I've never seen this portrayed on film before. A bunch of women, all women, only women, being portrayed as powerful and invincible and incredible and passionate and fiery. I've never seen that. And it made me so emotional because, you know, I don't know exactly when that film came out, but I was like at least 50 years old. It's the first time I'm seeing that in my whole life. You know, you've got to see things to have neural pathways in your brain that tell you they're possible. And if you think about what in our culture, what people are seeing all the time, it's, you know, a lot of people are being left out. They're being left out of the equation. So that is what any policies that are supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion are about. So to come in and be like, we're not doing that anymore is disgusting. I'm going to be honest with you. So if you're like one of the people that's like, yeah, we're getting rid of that crap, might not be the flex that you think it is. I don't think that it is what you think it is. You know, I think that you believe it's putting people who are less qualified in places they don't belong. It's not. And you got to really, I don't know what to tell you. Like, what you're actually saying is, I believe white men are the pinnacle and the top, straight white men, and everybody else isn't quite as good. So if anyone else is up there who got a job, clearly they got it because, you know, of this DEI policy. It couldn't possibly be that they're just as qualified or more qualified. That is some racist stuff there that you should probably really take a look at. I'm just going to call it what it is. When the president of the United States gets up and says that a plane crash happened because of DEI and there hasn't even been an investigation and people are devastated and there are families who are heartbroken and first responders trying to find the victims, like, and bring these families some closure, that's disgusting and racist. It absolutely is. So that's what we're dealing with here. You know, we're dealing with queer people who are beside themselves right now, transgender people who are beside themselves right now, you know, Black, brown, indigenous people who are beside themselves right now and feel very, well, I'm not going to speak for anybody. I'm just going to say I am very heartbroken for a lot of my friends. A lot of people that I care deeply about. They can speak for themselves. But I would throw my body in front of anyone who is feeling unsafe right now because I am beside myself. You know, this is not the country that I like want. This is not what I want. It's not what I want for any of us. You know, I really want to be the country where there's a siren and we're just praying like that everyone is okay, whomever's on the other end of that siren, you know. And I mean that globally too. It's like, I know that there are people who, you know, withheld their vote because they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Kamala Harris because they were very unhappy about what happened in Gaza. And they felt like, well, Biden Harris, you know, supported what was going on there. And so I can't vote for her in good conscience. Okay. I understand that people stayed home because of that. They voted in the way that they felt like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to opt out. I'm just not going to do it. For me, I feel like there are so many places, and I named a lot of them before, in the world where people are, including Gaza, where people are suffering, and nothing about what has happened here it's just going to make it worse for everyone. And that was my deep, genuine concern going into this, and it continues to be now. I just feel like this situation has made it worse for everyone. And that's what I was worried about, and everything has it's gotten to such a state now where it's like everything's politicized. It's like you say one thing and people scream at you. Even with like the fires with LA, you start talking about people, your friends who've lost their homes, and people start screaming at you about Gaza. Like, you can't have compassion for people in more than one place in the world. Or you say the poor kids at the music festival in Israel, and the people scream at you about 70 years. It's like you can't say anything. Well, Sudan, or like you can't. It's insanity. Anywhere people are suffering is a problem. Anywhere. It's a problem that we should all be concerned about. It's like, that's the issue. And I've been really consistent, whether I've disappointed you or what, I've been incredibly consistent. I know that because I felt that way for as long as I've been, I've been doing this kind of work for a really long time. It's not new. Yeah, I remember I want to say it was maybe 2014 or something. There's a filmmaker named Bryan Singer, and he made a documentary called Children of War, and it was about these child soldiers in the Congo, and it was really one of the most devastating but beautiful films I've ever seen. And that was like, I think it was like 2014. And these are kids who were like 10, 11, and these people, they came in, these kids were kidnapped out of their homes, their families were slaughtered, and they were indoctrinated, and then ended up being the people going and like killing other people's families. And I mean, it's like, we could go back and be talking about a lot of horrific things that have been happening in this world forever. These are not isolated incidents, So for me, I think I'm at the point where it's like, I don't know, we've got to be looking at the big picture. And I'm always going to be voting for people where I think there's some hope and some sanity and some compassion, and where at least I feel confident democracy will still be standing at the end. And this is not it. Like, so that's all. Do I feel like we need something really, really different at this moment? Yeah, I do. I feel like we really need to be doing more for people. I think we need to be doing more for people by far than we are. And it is very strange to me that the party of, family values, right? The family of law and order is supporting an adjudicated rapist who grabs women by the pussy and puts guys like Pete Hegseth, an active alcoholic who has like credible sexual assault, allegations. And I've lost track of how many wives and how many people he's cheated on and how many affairs he's had. Like, this is the guy in charge of the military. Like, this is family values, and like these are Christian values, like, and Christian values. And then you have a problem with free school lunches for people. Like kids who are, aren't going to be able to have lunch. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't add up at all. But you're good with the billionaire party like that. It just like the brain just doesn't, and no like diversity, equity, or inclusion. We're not going to do that. And abortion is murder, but the kids can get shot down at school every week and we'll send thoughts and prayers, don't touch our guns, and like these kids in Texas, I don't know if you saw this, but there are all these reports now of children who have had to leave the state of Texas to get abortion care. They're like 10, 11, 12, because they can't get abortions in the state. This is where we're at. Like, there's a child abuse situation going on here. Babies being forced to carry their stepdad's baby to term. And, I don't know. Like, I'm seeing the whole thing has just become, I don't know. It's just become a very strange set of circumstances. And so a lot of people are feeling kind of mind boggled right now. There is something about like it being easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get through the gates of heaven. I'm pretty sure. I didn't make that up, but like, I don't know what to tell you. And I see these very odd things, and I'm sure you do too, where people are talking about DEI and like, or oh, this is so great now. People that voted for all of this chaos, this is great because he's going to really clean up the budget. It's not great. It's terrible. It's awful. And by the way, like tax breaks are going way up for people who are billionaires, and you're gonna pay more in taxes for people who are already struggling. And they're thinking about taxing students who have taken out student loans who are in college in order to somehow like pay for this. And they're also considering like not taxing Social Security benefits, which will be great for people who are getting Social Security benefits right now. Maybe you have some people like that in your life, your parents, whatever, but then there won't be Social Security benefits for people like me. They'll be gone because some of the way that we replenish that fund is by taxing some of the people who are getting Social Security benefits and maybe have other sources of income. We tax that so that the Social Security fund gets replenished. And then there will be funds for people like me who have been working their asses off their entire lives and are counting on that money. It won't be there. But, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what a lot of people voted for. So, this is where we are, right? You got to deal with reality as it is. This is unfortunately where it is. Do I think we just upped the suffering quotient by a lot? Yeah. Do I think we just made a lot of people a lot more unsafe? I do. Am I heartbroken? For sure. Absolutely. And am I, some days it's like, I'll have moments where I experience just incandescent rage. And then there'll be other moments where I am just feeling the most intense despair. But you can't live in those places. You can't live in those places. Oh, I do want to say something else too. This whole thing of like, we are really worried about women's sports teams and women's locker rooms and women's restrooms, and we want to protect women. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. If you want to protect women, start talking to men. That's who you can talk to. Talk to men. The people I have been harmed by in my life are straight men on the street. And yeah, that's the problem, okay? talk to the men who, for example, were involved in the Giselle Pellic, like talk to those dudes. Get the straight men in your world to start talking about rape culture with their bro guys. And the good guys too. Talk about the good men in your life and figure out what's going on. Let them start talking to the men in their life. The Pete Hegseths in their life. The Donald Trumps in their life. The men who think women are there for the taking. Those are the men who put girls and women in harm's way. Those are the people to worry about, in case you're at all confused. The guy who grabbed me in the stairwell when I was 13 years old. The guy who flashed me on the public bus when I was 10. The guy who flashed me when I was 8 years old in Central Park. You know? The guy who did not take no for an answer when I was 16. Straight, white, 24-year-old dude. Okay? Those are the guys who put us in danger. Those are the guys. If you want to make women and girls safe, talk to those guys. Those are the guys that we need protection from. This is like absolute and utter garbage. The rest of it. Your sports teams and your women's bathrooms. Honestly, take that crap and you know where you can put it because it's absolute garbage. And any of you supporting that really, really ought to take a hard look at what's going on with your spiritual practice, with your empathy, with your whatever, you know. I'm very happy for you that like you feel like you were born in the right body and that's all easy for you. Congratulations. It's not easy for everybody. And most people who are, you know, in tune with with the way that they feel are a little less rigid. You know, I mean, honestly, it's like all this stuff that we do with the gender, it causes so much pain for people. This thing of like, oh, you know, if you're a girl, you go down the pink sparkly unicorn aisle. And if you're a boy, go down the like trucks and football aisle. It's like we already know this. Like we've made ourselves sick. That's what the kids are like having a hard time with, you know? It's just maybe trust these kids a little bit. I don't know. Just like, I don't know. But I will say that we can't live in 24/7 rage or 24/7 despair. Can't do it. It's not going to work. And it's not going to help anybody. You know, it's not going to help anybody if I'm like all the time, or if I'm like just beside myself, you know, like that's not going to be helpful. And so what things are going to be helpful? Certainly being engaged, like, and what I mean by that, okay, I do not mean scrolling on social media all day. You'll make yourself sick. You'll be in one of those two places and then you'll burn out. So that's not the way. Like really try very hard. What I've been doing as far as that stuff goes is, I get on to do the things that feel productive to me, like this. This feels very I love being with y'all, you know. I get on here to share the things I've written or, you know, whatever's happening. Like that's what I do. If there are accounts that you follow on social media that feel helpful, that feel useful, that are sharing inspiring, that, you know, information, great. Be targeted about it. Be mindful. You know, make it a practice. Like just go right to those accounts. Be pretty careful about reading comments unless you feel super secure it's going to be okay. And then get off. Get off of, you know, social. Share what you want to share, go where you want to go, and get off. Pick a few sources of information for your news. So whatever that is for you. I've been reading The Guardian, I've been reading the BBC, the Associated Press. As much as possible, I'm trying to find those places where they're not opinion pieces. I just want to know like what is happening, you know, what's actually happening. And then there are other things that are, you know, other places that are cropping up like the Contrarian, or, you know, it's like you can start to see that there are a lot of journalists that are leaving these kind of legacy media publications steady, right? Like Dan Rather, like there are people who are going away from these places because they are being purchased by people like Jeff Bezos, and then they're not free anymore to just report the facts. It's a lot of it is about clickbait and all that stuff. So find a few sources of information that you trust. Try to make sure that they are, you don't want to be in an echo chamber. And that's why sometimes the BBC is good, because like get outside of the states and just try to see if you can find something that's like, here's what's happening in that crazy country. And set a timer for that too, like 20 minutes. My advice, for whatever it's worth, is not before coffee in the morning and not before bed at night. Just find 20 minutes somewhere in the day that works for you so that you are aware of what's happening. I don't think it's a good time for us to like not be paying attention, though you may need a day off, and that's fine. If you start to feel like my nervous system is not okay, it's okay. Take a day off. Like, trust the rest of us have it and just take the day off if you need to, because you're not going to be good to anybody if you have a breakdown. So there's that too. But that's what I'm doing. I'm very quickly on and off social. So, if you're trying to get a hold of me, please email me. Email me or find me on Substack. That's where I write, and that's where I put out the podcast. And that's right now, the best place to find me, and or email me. But I'm on and off social as fast as I can be, and I am reading for 20 minutes. I don't want to hear his voice. It's not for me. And that way you know what's happening, and then reach out to your representatives. And it's really easy. There are different apps, like there's 5 Calls. There's an app, and it'll like, if you can download that really easily. That's one way. Indivisible is another one. You can just even Google, like, how do I find my representatives? There are so many different resources because people are really smart. And so it is literally as easy as putting in your zip code, and it'll like instantly show you, here are your representatives, here's their phone number, here's their email. Sometimes you'll even find an email written, and all you have to do is like, it'll autofill your name and your information, and you hit send. You can do this stuff, and it matters. If you think it doesn't matter, like, it honestly does, because what happens when there are confirmation hearings, for example, or, whatever the issues may be, and there are going to be a million of them, is these people are paying attention. Hey, they've got staffers, they've got assistants. You know what? Your inbox is exploding with constituents who are really upset and do not want you to confirm this person. Your inbox is exploding. The phones are ringing off the hook because your constituents are really upset about, these executive orders. Like, it matters. And if those things aren't happening, no one's calling, no one's emailing, I guess they're not really paying attention. That's also, that also matters. So try to find some system that makes it easy for you and just use it every day. Just 5 minutes, and just reach out to your representatives. The last thing that I would do is try to find whatever the cause is that is most upsetting to you. You personally, whatever the thing is that's happening right now that gets you the most, just beside yourself, is probably the one that you want to invest time in, right? Time and energy. So see if it's like, is there an organization, either like national or local, that I can volunteer with? A lot of these, even the national ones, they have local chapters. They can use help. Can I get involved in that way? And I understand if you're like, you don't have a lot of time, some of these things you can do, it's online support. Just see if there's something that you can be doing to support. Maybe it is a thing where you can go in. I think a lot of people are, they've gotten like, they're a little bit stuck at home. And you might be at home because you have to be, like, you're a caregiver, or you're just like, you're overwhelmed with work. I understand, but maybe it would be good to get out and go be with people, who are like-minded and who are trying to help other people stay safe. It might be really good right now. I do think that community is going to be the thing that keeps us sane. So those are some of the things that I think are going to be really helpful. And the last thing is, you know, one of the best ways to resist is to stay joyful, to not be in this constant state of reactivity. Some horrible thing is happening and we're just like, oh, responding is awful, right? Like this other thing is happening and we're, enraged. Like then you're just a victim of this terrible set of circumstances. That's not going to be good for you or anyone else. So that's why I'm saying you take control of the situation, right? You sort of like figure, okay, this is how I'm going to operate on social. This is how I'm going to get my information. And this is how I'm going to, contact my representatives. Here is a cause that really means so much to me. Here's how I'm going to show up for it. And like, here's how I'm going to stoke my joy, whatever those things are for you. I'm going to make sure I get outside every day. I'm going to whatever, again, these are really personal things. I'm going to get on my yoga mat. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to have a dance party in the kitchen. I'm going to blast 90s hip hop. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to fill my tank and remind myself like there's still art in this world. There's still great books. There's still great music. There's still the ocean. Don't let them steal your joy or make you forget how much beauty there is in this world, how many helpers there are, how many people there are who hear a siren and pray that everybody's going to be okay. And maybe that's the last thing I'll say. When I say the word pray, I'll just share with you, for me, I am not praying to like an entity. For me, this is me. It's not some like male entity in the sky with a ledger keeping tabs on us down here. Those are not my beliefs. I respect anyone's spiritual practice if it's helping them to be a better human being, if it's helping them make sense of this world, if it's helping them be a more compassionate person. I have all the respect in the world for it. It's when somebody's spiritual practice is coming with like a doctrine that says the family next to you that has two dads, that's a sin. And, those people are going to burn in hell and your beliefs are the only valid beliefs. That's where I have a problem. I don't respect that, because we're taking everything on faith, honestly. Like no one knows what's going on here. We're not going to know till we exhale for the final time. Then we'll know. And until then, we're taking it on faith. And so if we're taking it on faith, then a lot of it is just like we're choosing to believe things. Why would you choose to believe that when you could believe anything? I don't know. That's just my beliefs, So when I say I'm praying, I think I am praying to that collective energy, whatever, you want to call it, that energy of like the best in each one of us, that whole microcosm, macrocosm thing again, I'm praying like, can the best in each one of us rise to the surface? Can we remember that we are all connected here? And if any of us are suffering, all of us should care. All of us are suffering. If any of us don't have somewhere to sleep, somewhere safe to be, all of us are in that situation. Like, all of us need to be taking care of each other. Those are my prayers, like I'm just hoping that I'm going to be brave when I need to be brave. I'm going to say the hard things when I need to. I'm going to be able to show up for people. I'm going to do everything I can every day to make at least one person feel safer in this world, seen, understood, cared about, that's what I mean by that. So you know where to find me if you need some support. I am sending you a lot of love, and I hope that, this, at least some of it has been helpful. I don't expect us to agree on everything, and that's fine. I'm always open to conversation and to your thoughts. And, I want a much, much better world than this for all of us, And I'm sending you a whole lot of love. Until next time.